Hey, people of the Foundry! Exclamation point. Unreal Engine 5.6 up to 30% faster, 17% lower CPU usage. RTX neural texture compressor beta reducing VRAM usage by up to 96%. AMD research reducing VRAM usage for trees from 34.8 gigabytes to 51 kilobytes. He's got a lot of examples here. Anyway, the point is, when an engine update provides a larger performance gain than a new GPU generation, is software the real bottleneck for current PC performance? It feels like there are so many inefficient processes on all software fronts that we could freeze the current GPU and CPU generations and have larger gains by concentrating on software improvements compared to trying to brute force it with hardware advancements. Will actual hardware advancements further decrease over time? And will we instead pay for software upgrades to access more performance in the future? Cheers, regardless. Alex,
Wow.
well, it's kind of like an interesting question, right? But it's not really anything new, is it? The concept of improving performance has kind of been there since day one, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, just look at the Xbox 360 generation. You start with Gears of War 1 and the way that looks. And you have the same nominal engine name, Gears of War 3 on Xbox 360 years later, using Unreal Engine 3, and it looks and runs completely different than the first game. And there's optimizations there in the art pipeline. There's optimizations in how multi-threaded that engine was, how it used memory, how it streamed, and advancements as well in rendering technology, figuring out how to do things in a better way, because they had to be invented first and then optimized after the fact. So there's like all that. And I think that's always there and it's always ticking away. But now it's much more complex than it was ever before due to the size of games and the size of environments and the multiple paths you can invest your money in while you're making a game. And for a lot of studios that don't have the engineering talent, because the engineering talent has been bought up by Apple, Nvidia, AMD, Intel, Epic, and whoever also throws the biggest money out there, then you're not going to have the same priority as you had in the past on certain styles of optimization or even using a custom engine. So I feel like that is definitely something that we're struggling with with a different way than we have in the past due to the engineering talent being bought up. And I think that was a great point that I saw the other day when someone wrote about it. But regarding hardware, I just want to say that I think we're going to see some advances in hardware that aren't, that do fall within the traditional line. And they're going to be based around each time there's a node jump that is good and brings something to the table. I think the next batch of NVIDIA and AMD GPUs are going to show that in a good way. But beyond that, I think we're going to, like we've said a couple times in the past on the channel, all of us, as well as people, the guests that have guested on DF have said that we're going to, especially like Mark Cerny, that we're going to see like unit specialization, where instead of just having like a monolithic CU that does everything, we're going to say we take part of that, one of its processes, we see which is like the slowest path when doing it in a generic way, and we make hardware that does that better. And it's specialized, it's less versatile, but it does it better. So we get more bang for our buck in power, performance, and money under the same die size, a die area. And I think that's what we're going to see. That's why the Tensor Core is great. That's why RT acceleration is great. And maybe there's going to be more aspects of that in the future in other directions too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're kind of seeing it with the Blackwell generation, which used the same node as Ada Lovelace. So in that case, performance increases were kind of disappointing, apples to apples. And there is a change in focus towards machine learning stuff like multi-frame generation, etc. I mean, I think ultimately that sort of cadence is probably going to continue because the die shrinks are becoming rather more spaced apart. I just suspect that the actual software improvements that are baked into the RTX architectures, for example, are probably just going to get better. But we'll see. John, thoughts?
So this is something that a lot of people that I know doing software development have talked about for years, is like modern software in many cases is becoming bloated and unoptimized. There's just a lot of like tech debt is stuck in there as well.
Right.
It goes way beyond games, right? Like you just look at a lot of the tools we use every day and you think about just what's happening there and how much faster they could be, if properly really optimized. I always look at, I'm sorry, but Adobe Premiere and such, I think it could be a lot faster.
Oh yeah.
But just, there's a lot of software like this and games included. And that's why, this is one of the reasons why I was so big on what, Doom, the Dark Ages was doing. When you hear like Billy talk about the way that they were like structuring things and they were actually thinking about the electrical layouts on these chips as far as like how much latency does it take to get from this point to this point when passing data, where do we want to put this in memory to ensure that we can access this fast? Like that's like seriously, when people talk about optimization, that's the kind of stuff that really springs to mind, is like really taking advantage of what the hardware can do to maximize performance. And I don't think it really happens a lot that much these days. And specifically in games though, I do think part of it is just, one, game programming has become a lot more complex. There's just so much more going on. And two, there's also been the rise of middleware and software like Unreal Engine, which is a great support for developers, and it helps make a lot of things possible that would not have otherwise been possible. But it also means that you have a little less control. You could theoretically have less control. And also a lot of the optimization that might need to happen to make it run fast isn't happening, as it's either it's baked into the engine, or, you know, there's a lot of factors there, but basically you're not able to optimize to the level of some of this like really hardcore stuff when building those games in that way. And we feel it. And I do think that hardware is slowing down in terms of innovation. And it is like this. We've reached a point though where I do agree that to some degree, software really needs to catch up. And that also ties into the bottleneck of modern software development. That's a people problem. That's a staff problem. That's a time problem. There's so many other issues where software can't be as optimal as it would like, as we might like, for other factors. And it used to be hardware was a gigantic limiting factor, and software developers had to push really hard to just get whatever performance they could out of that hardware. But hardware has such an overhead now that I think there's a lot of software being released that's quote unquote good enough. Yes. You know, and then when you have all that good enough software running on the same system, you're getting performance that's just like not that amazing. And I really feel this a lot, even just like using modern operating systems like Windows and apps. Like you boot up Windows 98 and Microsoft Word on like a Pentium 2, from the 90s. And the experience and the amount of waiting that you're doing there isn't all that different from a modern PC. It's really not that much slower, right? And you still get most of the same functions. And so you're like, you look at that and it's just like, there's something wrong. Like the degree of hardware that we've seen, the jump in power, it's astronomical, but the software is not keeping pace. Mm-hmm.